Welcome to the 98% podcast, where we hear real stories from real people. And today is the special Q&A episode to kind of celebrate the 10 guests that we've had so far. So at the time of this video coming out, we've had a little bit more than 10, so I'm a little bit late on it, so I apologize. But I already have 20 down the pipeline, so you're going to see another video pretty soon. So how this is going to work is I'm going to go through the questions that the guests that we had made, and I'm going to answer all those just so you can also get to know me throughout this journey and this process as well. So before I do that, let's talk a little bit about kind of the future of this podcast. So like I said, we're getting ahead of it. So I think by the time this probably airs, we're going to have over 20 guests already. We have quite a few that are kind of in the pipeline right now because I'm releasing one every Friday. Okay, and one thing we're doing too is we're really trying to grow this channel. So if you could like and subscribe, that would be amazing because we're trying to get enough subscribers to get monetized, because that would be really nice to not only be able to share people's stories and connect, but also be able to make enough to where, I can be spending a lot more time doing this, which I think is really awesome. So we have that. So we have the main channel. So YouTube channel is the main one for this podcast, which I'm sure you're watching it on right now. It's also on Spotify and other podcasting platforms. So you'll be able to listen to it as well, which is nice. And we're going to do a few other things coming up here pretty soon just to kind of help with the marketing kind of strategy. So if you all feel like sharing, definitely share your favorite episodes from here on your social medias, etc. The more people we can bring to subscribe, the better we're going to do as a channel. And I, already thanking you ahead of time for that. The next things that we're going to be doing is if anybody's out there that's listening to this, if they're kind of more local to say Kansas City area, Lake of the Ozarks area, those are kind of the two cities that I'm kind of currently kind of tagging at the moment. Just let me know, because I'm looking for businesses or public places to host a kind of like you guys would say social experiment. But the goal is to bring, because this podcast is for the 98%, right? It's for the everyday people, hearing real stories from real people. What I want to do is actually get out in the market to do that with just everybody, right? So think about people just walking around, everyday strangers that we don't know. And I have a banner, which I can show you. Actually, I'll show you real quick. Okay, so we got a big banner. So this is going to go on the front of a table. So we're going to have 98% podcast, share your story, and then there will be a QR code, which you can't really see, QR code, that people can scan. And then what that's going to do is that's going to give them a link. So what they can do is they can link to all the socials, connect with us that way, but also they can donate or support whatever they want to do there as well, which is cool. So the goal with those is just to find businesses that want to do it. And within those businesses, what we'll do is we'll do a one-on-one episode for the owner or whoever I kind of talk to that I connect with, kind of just as, just to hear their story personally. And we might cater the questions a little bit different. So maybe more of like, what is the mission of your business? What are you hoping to get out of it? Just maybe like questions that are more geared towards that. But the goal is to do that, set up a table with that banner just to catch some attention. And then how we're going to do it is when people walk by, just ask if they would like to have a conversation. They sit down with me. What is your name? Where are you from? High level, tell us a little bit about yourself. And then we'll probably drop a deep question. So like, what's the biggest struggle you've made it through, right? And then the goal would be to get people to interact and to share. And then I would compile all of those guests that we have into one video, and the goal would be to do one of those monthly. So still trying to look for places to do that. I guess I could set up just about anywhere, but it'd be nice to kind of have a place to, like a legit place that I can connect with and do that. So that's going to be the future of the channel, because I'm just trying to find creative ways to connect with everyday people. So cool. So without further ado, let's get into these questions. So I have 9 questions here because we had 10 guests. One of those guests was me. So 9 questions I'm going to go through and I will answer them just like the guest answered these questions throughout the journey of the podcast. So let's see. First question is, if I could be any superhero, who would I be and why? So this is a tricky one. So when I think about superheroes, so I would say if I was creating one, which is funny enough, actually, which I wonder if we'll talk about this in another podcast, but me and a friend, we created a whole superhero group called the Time Crusaders back in the day, back in high school, which is funny. So I think I still have the papers and the biographies and everything. So I did always want to do that. I always thought it'd be cool to create a superhero team or be a superhero. So If I was a superhero, I don't know what my name would be just yet, but I would definitely have some type of flying ability because I like flying. Other than that, I'm not sure. I don't need to make myself OP, although everybody would want to make themselves a little overpowered, right? But yeah, so if I was creating one, I'd have flying of some type. But if I was an already existing superhero, I would say I've had a lot of people refer to me as Captain America as I've asked this question in the past. I don't know. I don't really feel like I am Captain America, but I feel like I do resonate with some of his characteristics, especially from the MCU. But I'd say I'd kind of blend with that and maybe an Iron Man because they're both very different, but somewhere in the middle, I feel like that's kind of me, right? Kind of outgoing, innovative, creative, kind of more like you could say Tony Stark side, or a little more kind of firm, good morals, fights for what he wants, like Cap. So I'd say I'm somewhere in the middle there. But my favorite superhero, I guess if you want to call it a superhero, has always been Spawn. So I don't know if you could call that a superhero, but that's one that I've always liked ever since a kid because I thought it looked cool and menacing. And for some reason, I like cool, menacing, dark things. So that's me. Okay. Question 2. So would you rather eat a bowl of sauerkraut or get kicked in the nuts? So you can thank my dad for this one. This is probably the most obscure question that I've had to give a guest. I'd say I'd eat sauerkraut. I mean, why would you want to get kicked? Why would you want to get kicked there? And I have been kneed there before, and it was not fun. If you're listening to this, you know who you are. But I had bruises, and it was rough. It was apparently an accident, but a very hard accident, and it didn't feel very good. Question 3. So would you rather be a millionaire on a deserted island with everything you need to survive, or make $30K a year and live a normal blue-collar life? I would say I would live a $30K a year blue-collar life just because I like connecting with people, and I think having everything you want on an island by yourself, I mean, I think it may sound nice in theory, but I think that would get old fast, and I don't think... I'll bet you a lot of people would say they'd want that, but I have a feeling most people would actually not be happy with that. So yeah, I'd say blue-collar life, not making much money, but maybe living with someone who also makes that money, because I know it's hard to survive off $30K, so maybe having a spouse or someone that also makes a little bit, and just enjoy life together in that aspect. So next question. So what's the biggest problem society is facing today? This is a tough one because I don't think it's one thing. I have a few different thoughts on this. I'd say one of them, I think, not having a shared set of ideals is causing issues, which can be anything. I think obviously we, as a nation, we are founded in Christianity. That's how most of our rules and laws and everything were built off of that platform, right, of the Bible. But at that point, right, I think, and I mean, this isn't to go into church stuff. This is just having to do with the Bible. But, we always had a shared set of ideals. And now with the new age of, say, the internet, access to tons of information, we can kind of choose. We have access to do different things right now. And not to say any way is right or wrong, but when we all have a different set of ideals on what is right or wrong, it can cause a lot of confusion. And I see that a lot in the world today where, I think just people are confused, especially the younger generations. And I think it's just because, right, I don't think we have that ideal to strive towards, right? Or it's not as common these days. So I feel like there has been an uptick in Christianity, which is a form of ideals, right? So that makes sense to have that form of good to where everybody knows what's right and what's wrong pretty specifically. But honestly, I think as long as you treat everybody the way you want to be treated, I feel like is fair and I feel like would work, but it's hard to say because sometimes we have bad days and we probably aren't treating ourselves very well, so we probably won't treat anybody else very well either. So I don't know. I think a shared set of ideals is one problem. Lack of connection, I think, is another one. And I think a lot of this, if we go back far enough, I think a lot of this, I mean, I could say the internet, I guess, is one of the biggest problems, but it's not necessarily a problem, right? It's just, and I read this from someone. So if you guys have heard of Thomas Sowell, so he's economist, but he's got good information. But he always talks about that, like, nothing's ever 100%, right? So it's always give or take. So whenever we put a new law in place, whenever we create a system that we think is good for someone, it's always going to be bad for someone too. So the goal is to come up with something that is better for more people than it is worse for a smaller amount of people, right? So that's the goal, is just to kind of minimize that area, which is why it's tough when we do things that harm the majority. So not to say internet did that, because internet has tons of pros, but I think we're starting to see the cons of it. And I think one is, right, we have lots of misinformation these days, which is tricky. And the algorithms from social media definitely affect that. So if I'm on social media and I follow a bunch of stuff, that algorithm decides to give me all these things, and then I perceive the world in that light. Now, I might have a friend that has maybe a different perspective. He watches different things. So he may get a whole different news feed and perspective than what I get. So then our realities, if we're investing in that and knowing, and like that's where we get our information from, then it's kind of all over the place, right? And I think that's a problem. So that's one problem there. Lack of connection, I think. Dating apps is another great example. I don't think those are necessarily very effective. I did hear a perspective that I did like, though, is think of them less like dating apps, think of more like introduction apps. That makes more sense, right? So being able to have a conversation, meet up with someone, just talk, see how things are going. Not necessarily thinking about that as this is how I'm going to find a partner. Because otherwise, yeah, it's a mess. It's a nightmare. so there's that. And then, yeah, I'd say the shared set of ideals, I think, falls into that category. So I'd say just the uptick of trying to figure out what to do with internet. And I think we're going to figure that out. I think we've figured it out here and there. And I think one thing that I think we do well as humans is we find a way as a society to balance things out, right? If things go really far one way, we tend to do a lot of things to get ourselves kind of shifted and kind of find that middle ground again. So it just stinks that we have to go through a lot of those troubles. So I'd say right now that is an issue. I think a lot of people feel lost and confused. We feel overwhelmed. I think social media plays a huge factor in this, which is why this podcast is on social, right? It seems counterproductive, but you got to meet people where they're at, right? So you got to think about that aspect of trying to give people to get good emotional connection with people. And that's going out and actually meeting people and seeing what everybody's life is actually like, rather than just the 2% or just the things people want to see or that you tend to see, whether they're doing it on purpose or not. So I'd say right now, I think, yeah, the lack of connection and yeah, lack of shared ideals, social media, you could even say internet is just, they're causing issues now that we didn't have to utilize or that we didn't have before. So we'll figure it out. And I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. It's just, it's causing some problems now, I think. So that would be my answer to that question. Okay, so next question. So what is your biggest regret? So I would say, this is an interesting question because I don't think I would change where I am now and today, right? So, I mean, right now, I'd say as far as, so I am in a great place, but I'd say as far as, I'm definitely in a starting over point in my career in life currently, right? Which I could say that's kind of like maybe a lower place as far as environment, right? So it's trying to figure out, a new job, trying to figure out lots of new things. So like, I'd say I'm in an interesting place right now, but I don't think I would trade it. So when I think about the question of regrets, obviously regrets mean something that I wish I would have done that I'm not doing. But I think if I would have done something different, I'd end up in a different place than I am now. And I don't think it would be any better. Now, if I had to answer and I had to come up with one specific thing, I would say if I did have a regret of any kind, I would say it might be the regret of not pursuing music consistently after 2014. So, some of the guys will know this that we played with, but we played for about 8 years straight. We didn't do a ton of shows, but we did. I mean, towards the end there, we were doing a show roughly every month, maybe every 2 months. We were doing shows pretty consistently. And then 2014 happened, and I can't remember if it was just moving, having kids, or what happened, but it just kind of fizzled out, and we just kind of stopped playing. And I do sometimes think about, like, if I would have been playing if I would have had that whole decade of just continuing to perform, write music and stuff, would I be able to make a career out of it now? And I don't know. right? We don't know the future. So do I like where I am now? Yes. And even though I put music on the back burner for a bit and pursued other things, I know those things helped a lot. So for instance, some of those things that I pursued was work, right? Work at Nike. That was something I wanted to focus more on, being, you could say a manager, like teaching, coaching, leading, etc., right? And that gave me a lot of tools, right? And that also led to the next job, which was me doing training and development for them, especially on leadership development, right? Which taught me how to be a facilitator. So our job was actually labeled as master facilitators, right? Being able to facilitate content. So if I would have pursued music, then I wouldn't have had all those opportunities. And then all of those opportunities may not have led to me doing this podcast, right? So regret is an interesting thing, right? So I think, especially when we're in low places and we feel bad about our current situation or current stance or wherever we are in the current moment, then I think we can latch on to those feelings of regret, right? If I only would have done this, but we really don't know if anything would have turned out different. And I think that's an interesting thing. There was this one person that I listened to on this podcast, and it was a really interesting concept. And they talked about not doing things, because maybe some people feel regret more than others, and I think that probably might be fair too. But the concept is not to try to live a life with no regrets, but live a life with regrets that you feel okay about, which means that you're always going to have regrets, even towards the end of your life, but which regrets can you not live without, right? And those are the things that they say you should probably pursue, right? So if you are going to get old one day and think like, I wish I would have had kids, then odds are maybe you should have kids, right? Even if you're unsure about it. Or same thing with music, if that was kind of my thing, right? Then it would have been pursue music because you're going to regret this later, right? And yeah, you're always going to have regrets. So making a choice between doing this and that. So this example here where I had learned leadership development training skills, music, I was choosing in that moment one regret that I was going to have. And one of the regrets was going to be to not do music for a while, and miss out on that opportunity potentially. But then one was to not pursue leadership and leadership development, which actually in the long term, when I think about it, I think that one benefited me more to this current space than the other one would have. Now, hypothetical, you never know. So, but that's a good thing to think about. So we'd love to hear it. So in the comments, feel free to put that in the comments. I'm sure everybody kind of has those lingering regrets. Pop it in there and we'll chat about it. I'd love to hear where everybody's at on that. So what was your defining moment? This is a tough one because I'm trying to think about the definition of defining, right? Because I think that there's moments, because what are we trying to define? I'd say, if I think about one of the most impactful things that's impacted my life that would define me, I guess, for who I am today, I'd say having a child was one of them. I think having a daughter really kind of helps you. One, it helps you be stronger, helps you realize you have to take care of someone else. It just gives you these tools that you don't know that you need, and this level of self-awareness that you don't know that you need until you're in it, right? And I think that was probably, I'd say, the defining moment of being a father. But I also think of some other stuff. Like I remember playing some concerts, just being in the moment and thinking like, this feels right. This feels like me, right? And just performing my heart out for 2 hours straight, singing, expressing all these songs and these emotions through these songs for a group of people that I'm hoping it impacts them in a positive way. That's a big one too, right? I even think about even with work, when I was working with Nike and we were doing some of the trainings, facilitations that I did for big groups of people and thinking about how well they were impacting that moment and just how good it felt to perform in that space. So I'd say there's lots of moments I'd say that were defining for me. Even I'd say, winning district champ at hurdles in high school was a defining moment, right? That was just showing that all the work that I put into that specific event paid off for that moment. I ran a terrible race in sectionals, the race after which I wish I would have ran good, but yeah, in that moment, like that was a good moment. So I'd say there's lots of defining moment, not necessarily just one. But yeah, same thing. Drop your answer in the comments. What's your defining moment? Let's see, 7. So what drives and motivates you? So I would say what drives and motivates me, wanting to do a good job. I don't like when I pursue things, I get kind of obsessed, and I don't know if there's anything about that. I don't know if that's ADHD or whatever. I've took tests. I don't think I have ADHD, but I wouldn't doubt if there is something in there, right? It's all a spectrum. But I know when I'm into something, I get very obsessed about it, and I want to do it 100%, right? So this could be, and it's silly. So it could be anything from, yeah, being at work, like giving 100% on a project I'm working on, doing artwork, giving 100% to that, doing this podcast, relationships. I mean, it could be anything. Like I always like to give it. Now, do I give it consistently? No. So I tend to be like super hyper focused on this one thing, and then it's like, okay, next, let's do this thing, and then okay, wait, let's do this thing. So consistency has been something I've had to develop over time. Consistency and discipline, because it's not innate in me to be disciplined, and it may not be for most people. Discipline is the reason. I mean, discipline is doing something because you don't want to do it, right? But yeah, it's interesting. So I would say what drives and motivates me. So I think helping people and doing a good job. Like I like doing a good job, making sure that I put 100% of what I do. Helping people, I like impacting people in a positive way because I like connecting, which is why I do this podcast, which is why I did music, which is why I did everything, because I like teaching, I like connecting, I like listening to people and just having fun, right, at the end of the day with people. And then I'd say creativity is probably in that space too, of just I like being able to have freedom to just be creative, right? Come up with what I want to do. I always like to create things a little off the wall. I remember even going through school, they would always ask for projects like, hey, this project has to be like this. And I would be like, oh no, that's boring. And then I'd ask like, hey, what if I did it like this? And you'd be surprised, but I don't know if I just had a way with words or whatever, if they didn't really care. But there were plenty of times where assignments got shifted and they let me do something different because I just asked and wanted to do something that had a little bit more me on there, right? Like something that's a little bit different. And I've always liked that because I think we can get stuck in doing things a kind of a cookie cutter way and getting very disappointed by like having to do the same mundane thing every time. But I think you might find like if you actually have conversations with people and let them know what you want to do, not ask what you want to do, but tell them, give them a game plan. I think you'd be surprised how many people say like, okay, right, this could be a boss, a teacher, whatever. I think you'd be surprised, but that's been my experience anyways. If you give a good case, you share what you want to do, usually a lot of times they say yes. And then if not, you can compromise. Okay, well, what if we did this? What if we do this? Before you know it, there you go. And now you can insert yourself in that space, right? And I think that's important because then you're satisfied of what you did because you did it and it felt in alignment with you and you got to use creativity rather than just feel like you're just doing stuff to doing stuff. So I'd say what drives and motivates me to recap. So helping people, doing my best, and being creative or having creative outlets. Let's see. When was the last time you had real fun? Real fun. So I like to think I'm a fun guy. I would just, I don't know. I always think of that joke. I don't remember how the beginning goes, so it's terrible. But it ends. The pun is fun guy. Okay. But yeah. So I'd say I like to have fun in general. But fun for me almost always revolves around hanging out with someone. But it's like, I mean, it could be playing a sport. I think any type of activity is fun. So anytime I can go out and play something with someone or go hiking with someone, I just love that. Like having new experiences with someone. Now, do I like doing things on my own? Of course, but I don't know what it is. It's just I've always been that way. Like yes, like I could go experience things on my own and probably get enjoyment out of it. But I always feel like if I am with someone I like, with the right person or with someone that's fun, like we're going to have twice as much fun, like because it's also not only you enjoying the moment, but also enjoying the moment that the other person is also enjoying, which I think is pretty neat as well. So the last time I had real fun is actually something kind of small. So I mean, like I said, I have fun a lot, but I'd say one moment that I could think of recently was going to Tennessee, and it was with my family, and it wasn't necessarily going to Tennessee to go to Tennessee. Like it wasn't the stuff we did there. was actually the conversation. So I'll so if they watch this, I'm just going to be honest with everybody. But so there was one night where we were just hanging out on the deck, me, brother, sister, dad, mom, right? When we're all just hanging up there, and everybody had to drink a little bit. I don't drink. I've still never had alcohol. Fun fact. But the funny thing is like when people start drinking and start getting more fun and like let loose, like that's my opportunity to let loose too. So if you would have showed up, you would have thought I was drinking alongside of them, right? But it's just the fun conversation we had, like just seeing how the conversation that came up, how funny it was, how much we were just laughing and enjoying the moment. I mean, we were cracking jokes about, something my dad said. We're cracking jokes about just everything. And it's funny because it's like, which I think that's a good point too, is it's not always about what you do. It's kind of who you're with sometimes. And, I've had plenty of moments that I hang out with my family, but for some reason that moment, as far as recent, that was a time where I really had fun. So it was nice. Let's see. Next question. Okay, and this is the last one that I have for now. So what have you done recently to change someone's life? I mean, I would say that most times daughter's the easy answer, is because I think, there's lots of different factors here. There's nature and nurture conversation on what effects have, I think somewhere in the middle, right? I think kids and stuff have a certain temperament that may end up being kind of who they're going to be regardless. But I do think environment does have a certain impact, and it might impact girls more than it does boys, according to some research that I've listened to, just based on how the brains operate. So I don't know. But all I'm saying is that I'd say each and every moment that I have with my daughter, I'd say is an opportunity to change her life, and hopefully for the better, right? So, because the thing is about girls, right? So when they grow up, right, they tend to meet guys, or their at least perception of guys is based a lot on their father, right? So, and I think that's huge. So if I can be a good father for her, it's going to just help her look for some partner in the future that's going to be kind of like her dad, right? Like she knows what to look for. And I think when we can be a good father for daughters, it's just going to be much helpful in the long run, right? When they grow up, and then we don't have to worry about all the drama, etc. And it's not an easy thing to do. It's not easy to be a father or a good father. We never show up 100%, right? There's plenty of times where I could have been better. But I think, those moments where we can just show up in a good way, I think is really important. So I'd say that. I'm sure there's another example. That's the easy answer. The first thing that came into my head. But I've had plenty of friends that I know that have said that I've changed their life, and I never did it with any intention. I just hung out and enjoyed their presence and spent time with them, and care about them. And I don't even feel like I've seen a lot of them or spent a lot of time with them much at all. Sometimes, but they still appreciate it. And so hopefully just the people I contact with or come in contact with, hopefully I impact in a good way. And that's usually what I hope for, is I hope that more times than not, that every interaction that I have with someone is a positive one and helpful, that could help change someone's life. Because people pay attention not what you say, but how you act. And I think that's important. So cool. So thanks so much for listening to this. So that was the Q&A episode for the first 10 guests. So if you're on the first, feel free also, if you like these questions, put your answers in the comments. I would love to hear what you all think. I think it'd be a good way to just continue to connect with each other. I will keep doing this. So what I'm going to do is I have 10 guests. I'm going to do one with every 10 guests. I'll do the 10 episodes. So that's going to be a reoccurring one that I always do. So when we hit 20, so when I actually get 20 done, I'll have 20 done by the end of next week probably. But when they're actually not finished, but actually public, then I'll post the 20, the 30, the 40, right? We'll go down that. And when we start growing the channel, I'll start doing maybe different Q&A episodes, maybe based on subscribers. So if we can get that subscriber count up, we should do that. So right now, and I'm going to be basing it off YouTube. So YouTube, I think, is the main platform that this channel is going to live on. So if we can up that count, that'd be great. I think right now, as of this particular time when I'm recording this video, we're at like 63 or something like that subscribers. So we did just start not very long ago. But I'd say when we get to 100, I'd say that would be a good time to do an episode. So I think maybe we'll do one at the 100, at the 500, at the 1,000, right? And we'll kind of just go from there. But the goal is actually to also create a space where you all, the audience, can actually ask your questions, right? So be able to put your answers or questions in the comments, etc., or reach out to me or whatever, and then we'll be able to answer those for you all. So thank you all so much. I appreciate you supporting the channel. If you can like, subscribe, share, talk to your friends, etc., and even reach out. Like if you're interested in potentially being a guest on this, feel free to let me know. And we'll see. I do have a wait list, but I'm willing to have guests on all the time because, right, the cool thing is about this podcast, it's real stories, real people. Guess what? We're all real people. So technically, I could have 7 billion episodes if I wanted to, right? But that's it. So thank you all. Appreciate it. And I'll catch you all in the next video, okay?